squad call for a coroner. I will believe we have one of our officers down.
He got off at 2, and the next thing we know, we're getting a call on the radio from a passerby. Is it a car accident?
We don't know. Some passersby got on his radio and kept saying, "Officer down, officer down."
All we know is it was a Bardstown City Police officer.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond Damaged and our second episode in the docuseries Bardstown, Kentucky, home of the Unsolved. Now today, as I told you last video, we will be going over the murder of Officer Jason Ellis. Jason was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, September 22nd, 1979, to Danny and Pam Ellis. The Ellis family resided in Batavia, Ohio, and had two daughters, Lacey and Kelly. Jason played baseball all through school, always wearing his number 5 jersey. He somehow made it seem easy. He always played with such ease and such grace. Jason graduated from Glen Est High School in 1998. He was, that same year, voted Player of the Year and won All-City at the Queen City Conference. Jason later attended the University of the Cumberlands, a private liberal arts college, home of the Patriots in Williamsburg, Kentucky. Jason carried his baseball career with him into college at the University of the Cumberlands. Here he broke many school records that still stand today, such as snagging the school's all-time record with 246 hits, 60 doubles, 34 home runs, and 183 RBIs. Jason met Amy Phillips on Valentine's Day 2001 at a party that a friend of both of theirs was holding. Jason got Amy's number from her best friend, and they made a date for a week later. Amy also attended the University of the Cumberlands College. Unbeknownst to Amy, her mother would stop in later that week for a surprise dinner that she wanted to have with her daughter. Amy was just distraught. She was so worried that Jason was going to cancel. Here she was, double booked with her date with Jason and her dinner with her mother. But instead of canceling, Jason showed up with flowers for both women and took them both out to dinner that night. Amy says this is when she knew that she would marry Jason, that he would be the man that she would spend the rest of her life with. Christmas 2002, Jason led Amy outside to her family's barn. She was sure he was going to give her the present she had been begging him for the last few months, which was a puppy. But instead, Jason dropped to one knee, presenting her with a cathedral-cut diamond and asking for her hand in marriage. Amy describes this moment as magical. In October 2004, Jason and Amy were married at St. John United Church of Christ in Louisville, Kentucky. Amy went all out for her wedding, and she said the moment those doors opened, she locked eyes with Jason, could not take her eyes off of his amazing smile, and that the whole world just seemed to fade away, and it was only them two at that moment. No one else existed in the world. Amy said Jason had told her early in their relationship that he had several dreams for his life. One was that he wanted to play baseball. 2 was that he wanted to have kids and a family. And lastly was that he wanted to be in law enforcement. After Jason and Amy married and they both graduated from the University of the Cumberlands, Jason was signed by his home team, the Cincinnati Reds organization, to play for their minor league team, the Mustangs Billings in Montana, from 2002 to 2004. But in 2004, Jason had a change of heart, and he left the Billings Mustang to pursue his other dream of becoming a police officer and becoming a father. Hunter, his firstborn son, was born only 2 weeks after Jason played his last game for the Billings Mustangs. Hunter was actually born with Down syndrome, but his parents showered him with unconditional love and made his life as normal as possible. The Ellis family decided to put down roots in Amy's hometown, Bardstown, Kentucky. Jason joined Bardstown Police Department in 2006. The chief there said that they had all kinds of candidates, but as soon as he seen Jason, he knew that the police department had to have him. They said that he was always making people laugh, always cutting jokes, but he took his job seriously and he took pride in what he done. The police department of Bardstown dates back to 1824, with 12 men who volunteered to keep things in order. Prior to that, the town was patrolled by local sheriff and his deputies. Marshal George Hunter was sworn in January 14, 1868. Hunter was given a $600 annual salary and served 2 terms. During the time that Jason was a police officer, Chief Bevan was over the police department, and there was 27 sworn officers. Jason and Amy had their second son, Parker, in 2007. Now, Parker was known as Jason's mini-me. He looked just like his father. He also had that passion for baseball that Jason also had. Jason would actually soon coach his son's t-ball team in Nelson County, Kentucky, a few years later. Now we're going to go through a timeline of Jason's couple last days. May 24th, 2013, 2 a.m. Officer Jason Ellis, waiting for his shift to be over, was sitting in the parking lot of the Bardstown Police Department. He had been missing his canine partner, Figo. Figo was unable to come with him the last couple of nights due to his canine cruiser being in the shop being painted, and because the car that he was driving was possibly unsafe for Figo, Jason refused to bring him along. Jason was actually the only canine officer in Bardstown, Kentucky. Jason had received the Governor's Awards for Impaired Driving Enforcement in 2007, Officer of the Year in 2008, and was part of the Special Response Team and the NNDDA, as well as the Canine Association with his partner Figo. With Jason's wife, Amy, surely to be on the couch, as she always did, waiting for her husband to get off work, unable to go to bed and sleep soundly while her husband was at work. His work always seemed to bother her, as would a police officer's wife. His 2 boys soundly asleep, and his canine partner Figo awaiting him at home. Jason called off duty for the night and headed that way. Jason pulled out of the parking lot and took the usual route down Stephen Foster Avenue, past the city's Walmart and Cracker Barrel, before pulling onto the moderately lit overpass. He veers into the left turn lane and turns onto the ramp. He turns onto exit 34 for Route 55 towards Springfield and Bloomfield. He follows the exit around a sharp, slow incline between 2 rocky cliffs full of brush, small trees, and blooming flowers. Officer Jason Ellis makes his turn at the stop sign, known as the Y to the locals, and makes his way through the winding country roads toward his home. 2:30 a.m. Jason finally pulls into his driveway, turns the key, cutting off his ignition to his cruiser, opens the door, and slides out. Figo is awaiting him as always, eager to see his partner, his best friend. Jason shows Figo some much needed attention, scratching his head and talking to his partner. before heading inside. Amy, who is never able to sleep soundly when Jason is at work, is awoken by the rattling of the doorknob and the jingling of Jason's keys. So she stumbles to the door, and she stumbles to open it, finally getting the door open and greeting her husband with a hug and a kiss. And then, as she's heading off to her room to finally get some much-needed rest, after seeing her husband, the relief just seemed to leave her shoulders, and she was finally able to relax. Jason hollered at her, "Good night, Mama." Unable to go to sleep, Jason needs to wind down from his shift, so he takes a seat on the couch that was warmed by Amy earlier and decides to watch some TV. Jason knew that Amy always worried about his job as a police officer, so he never brought his work home. He left work at work, and when he came home, he was home. He always kept the two worlds separate from one another. May 25th, 2013, 5:45 a.m. Amy awakens to the sound of her alarm. Jason is sleeping next to her in the queen-size bed, and she reluctantly leaves the warmth of her bed and her husband. Amy is a substitute teacher at the local elementary school, and today they have the events for the Memorial Day to get through. She heads into the other room. She heads into the bathroom, she showers, and dresses for what seems like it's going to be an unseasonably cold day. Once ready, Amy heads to the boys' room. Hunter 8, Parker 6, both snuggled up, warm in their beds. She drifts off into a daydream of the boys, who seem to be growing so fast. The love that she has for these boys sometimes seems to be overwhelming, as it does for mothers. She shakes her head, coming out of her stupor that she's fallen into, and wakes the boys, dressing them in their Bardstown Tigers t-shirts, some shorts, and a sweater to keep them warm. Amy, after dressing the boys, heads to the kitchen. She throws her usual into the blender and pours her a to-go cup of piping hot coffee. She begins making the boys' lunch. Amy peeks at the school menu for the week. She looks at Friday and sees that Parker is having pizza today. So she won't be packing Parker's lunch today because Parker loves pizza. For Hunter, she packs him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and yogurt, his absolute favorite. 7 a.m. Amy is running around, making sure the boys have all of their supplies for school, their backpacks, making sure they have their shoes on, their shoes tied, and making sure that she has everything that she will need for the day. Finally, they head out the door to the vehicle. Amy starts the vehicle, and they head for the elementary school. Amy, in her rush, forgets to kiss her husband goodbye, who is still sleeping soundly in their big bed. The three pull into the elementary school, approximately half an hour later. Just as the morning dew is drying on the leaves outside by the afternoon sun, Jason awakens. The 33-year-old, 200-pound, nearly 6 foot tall, minor league baseball player reluctantly rose out of bed and stumbles to the shower to get ready for his shift. Once out of the shower, he quickly dresses in his standard police attire, including his blue Kevlar bullet-resistant vest, his white metal name tag that reads Jason Ellis, Law Enforcement since 2006 on the right, and Officer Bardstown Police on the left. He grabs the contents of his shirt pocket from the night before, a ballpoint pen, handcuff key, and a notebook. Put them in the left pocket of his shirt. He wraps his gear belt, which holds pepper spray, handcuffs, his .40 caliber Glock handgun, a taser, ammunition magazines, and the Kenwood portable radio around his waist. He fastens his black plastic watch around his wrist, and he sits on the bed one last time and laces up his black leather uniform boots. He grabs his wallet, placing it in the back pocket of his pants, his pocket knife, placing it in the front. He grabs his keys and heads to his cruiser. After locking up the house, he stops momentarily to pet and play with his partner and best friend, Vigo, who is eager to go to work with Jason. Jason gives him a pet, speaks to him, letting him know that he's not able to go with him today, but that he'll return to work soon. Gets into his police cruiser and starts off for the day. 3:30 p.m. After shopping and stopping for fast food for a quick bite to eat for her and the boys, Amy starts her journey home after a productive and fun day at school. While driving the back roads, she takes a quick call from Hunter's nurse. While on the phone, Jason calls, beeping in. Amy, unable to take the call, lets the call go to voicemail. A short time later, on the gravel road that leads to their house, Amy sees Jason's cruiser coming toward her. She starts slowing down, rolls down her windows, the boys hollering from the back, "Daddy, Daddy!" Amy covers the phone with her hand while the nurse waits patiently. Jason, seeing that she's on the phone, lets her know that he will see her at the t-ball game later that day, that he is to coach for Parker. Jason tells Amy that he loves her. She tells him the same, and he also lets the boys know that he loves them before proceeding on to Bardstown Police Department to start his shift. 3:52 p.m. Jason makes his way to Bardstown Police Department, which is situated next to the Sheriff's Department and the courthouse on Plaza Drive, just minutes outside of downtown Bardstown. His night begins, as usual, patrolling the streets of historic downtown Bardstown. 5:40 p.m. After finishing up a traffic stop, Jason heads to his son's t-ball game at Dean Watts Park. His son's team, the Cardinals, who he coaches with his best friend and fellow officer, Andrew Riley, have already started their game. 5:48. Jason is only at the game for a few minutes before he is called back out away for work, unable to tell his wife or sons goodbye, leaving in a hurry. Jason is called out to a domestic disturbance that comes over his radio. An ex-boyfriend is harassing a young woman at her house. Jason ends up writing the boy a ticket, telling him to leave the premises and to never return. Jason is eager to get back to his son's t-ball game, but when he gets there, everyone is already packing up for the day, the game already over. Amy is talking with some t-ball moms, and Jason converses with the fellow dads. Jason isn't there long before he is again called away on an emergency call, and he leaves once again without telling his wife and his sons goodbye. Amy shrugs it off when he doesn't tell her or the kids bye. She knows that when he's called away for these emergencies, that he has to leave in a hurry. She continues her repertoire with the fellow t-ball moms. Amy looks down and sees a tattoo that one of the moms has on her foot. She secretly tells the mom that she one day too would like a tattoo, a twin of Jason's, the one he has of his badge. That is, only if something were to ever happen to Jason. Amy has planned a ride-along with Jason later that weekend, but she has this overwhelming urge to just be with her husband. So she decides to call and see if she can do a ride-along with him on that night. 8 p.m. On Amy's way home from the ball game, she calls Jason to see if she can ride along with him so she can be with her husband and get that much needed time together. But her calls go unanswered. Once arriving at home, her and the boys go about their regular routine. Their day ending with her bathing the boys and them actually falling asleep in front of the TV, exhausted, waiting on Daddy to get home. 9 p.m. Officer Andrew Riley, Jason's best friend, fellow coach, and fellow officer, come on duty for the night. Jason, Andrew, and a few fellow officers decide that for this night, since it's a slow night, they want to grill sausages for lunch. So Jason heads to the local 5-star to pick up some cheese, and while there, he grabs a Mountain Dew and a can of Copenhagen and returns to grill out with his fellow officers, his friends, his brothers. Jason and Andrew met while on duty for the Bardstown Police Department. Andrew had started for the Bardstown Police Department in 2005, so he was a veteran by 1 year, as Jason started in 2006. They had an instant connection and soon became best friends. They spent many weekends with each other's families for barbecues and to let their kids play together. Their wives got along great, and they had each other's backs on and off duty. They were best friends from the get-go, and he was a hell of a guy, Riley said. Everything he did the best that he could. 10:55 p.m. Later that night, Jason meets fellow officer Andrew Riley in the parking lot of the Early Childhood Center on Cardinal Drive. This is something the two regularly do, discussing their lives, their day, on slow nights like this one. After the two separate and go back out on patrol, Andrew and Jason text each other about a large cutout of Jason that sits in the window of the local drugstore. The two make jokes about it, Andrew undoubtedly giving Jason a hard time over it, referring to it as freaky shit, and tells Jason that he's actually going to post it on Reddit. 11 p.m. Jason finally calls home. Amy, asleep on the couch, as she always did, awakens to the ring of her phone. She barely missed Jason's call, but quickly returns it. The two finally get to have the call that they have missed all day long. Before hanging up, they tell each other that they love each other, and Jason tells Amy that he will see her when he gets home. 11:58 p.m. The next couple hours, Officer Ellis spends on a drunken, disorderly call. Once Jason arrives on the call, he is surprised to see that a man, Joseph Hamilton, is very much drunk and very hostile. But Mr. Hamilton also only has one arm, and due to his drunkenness, seems to have fallen and hurt himself. He is bleeding quite bad. Jason calls dispatch and asks them to call an ambulance and dispatch them on scene that Mr. Hamilton has injured himself. Once the EMS arrive and take Mr. Hamilton to the hospital, Jason gets in his car to patrol once more, hoping that the rest of his night is uneventful, but in the back of his mind, thinking that this call is not yet over, which he actually tells his best friend, Andrew Riley, that most likely he will end up at the hospital where this man has just been transferred to. And Jason was right. Just a few minutes after leaving the call, he is dispatched and told that Mr. Hamilton is causing a scene and that the local hospital would like for him to come out, assist them with treating Mr. Hamilton, and then transport him to the county jail, where he will undoubtedly spend the rest of his night passed out in the drunk tank. 12:33 a.m., May 26, 2013. Jason heads out for the hospital, dreading what awaits him there. Jason arrives A short time later, to find the hospital security guard trying to restrain Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton immediately recognizes Jason from earlier as the cop who arrested him, the one who sent him to the hospital. He starts cursing and shouting at Jason, starts threatening Jason in very vivid detail, telling Jason that he will kill him. Jason shakes it off. As a seasoned police officer, he's used to these kind of threats, and he chalks it up to no more than that, a threat by a drunken man. 1:22 a.m. Once Hamilton is done being treated, Jason begins taking him to the county jail. Within minutes of arriving at the jail, Hamilton is booked and put in the drunk tank. Jason and Sergeant Nancy Shekels share small banter for a short time, Nancy not knowing that she will be the last person to see or speak with Officer Jason Ellis. Jason gets back in his cruiser and heads down Stephen Foster Avenue, finally, on his way home after an eventful few hours. He was happy to put behind him. He then takes the exit to Blugrass Parkway, aka the BG by the locals. This is the same route Jason drives after every shift to make his way home, the route he has taken hundreds of times before. His wife Amy, 2 sons Hunter and Parker, and his canine partner Figo fast asleep at home. Amy awaiting her husband's arrival as she always did, only 20 minutes away. 1:59 a.m. Jason calls off duty for the last time ever.
139, fine.
139 off duty, 0200.
2:02 a.m. Amy awakens suddenly. She slowly climbs off the couch, picking up the boys one by one, taking them to their beds and tucking them in. She heads back to the couch and tries to fall back asleep, waiting for her husband to end his shift and to come home so she can once again breathe that sigh of relief. A short time later, Officer Jason Ellis starts around exit 34, Springfield and Bloomfield. As he slows to take the turn around the exit, he sees something in the road up ahead. There is an obstruction lying along the right side of the roadway. As he gets closer, he realizes that the obstruction is fallen tree limbs. Jason pulls across the road so that no other cars can pass. He stops his cruiser, flips on the flashing lights, and exits. 2:21 a.m. Chad Monroe, a full-time tobacco, dairy, and soybean farmer, has just punched his time card at Heaven Hill Distillery in Bardstown. It's quitting time and he is very ready to get home. Chad jumps into his red Dodge Ram 3500 and starts his route from Route 49 to Bluegrass Parkway East. Jason Ellis is back, getting ready to clean up the debris that could possibly cause a wreck, or God knows. Jason's not the type of guy to just leave something like this and go around it just so he can get home a little earlier. Jason leans down to pick up the debris that, unbeknownst to him, had been purposely placed there, awaiting him to pass by, and that someone awaits him up on the small incline overlooking the road to assassinate him. As Officer Ellis raises back up, an unknown person, hiding in the brush, pulls the trigger of a 12-gauge shotgun. Jason is struck, his vest is pelted over and over, and he loses his footing and begins his descent to the cold pavement. Still holding the branch in his left hand, a shot rings through the night again. This time, a different type of ammo is used. The shots are fatal. 3 shots in all, hitting Jason in his head, arm, and abdomen. Officer Jason Ellis is Bardstown's first officer killed in the line of duty. This was a carefully calculated and planned attack by someone who knew that Officer Ellis wasn't just the type of person that would leave the brush laying in the road. Someone who knew his work schedule. Someone who had been watching very closely. 10 or 15 minutes later, a Toyota Corolla pulls up behind the cruiser. The driver, a teenage boy who was driving home drunk family members. One of the family members, who is believed to be his mother, told him to pull up behind the cruiser and just wait. 2:36 a.m. Chad Monroe quickly approaches exit 34. Coming around the exit, he sees the lights of a 4-door, dark-colored Toyota sitting behind a police cruiser, just waiting. Tired but curious, Chad climbs down from the truck to see if he can be of some assistance. He walks up to the Toyota Corolla and knocks on the window. The boy rolls down the window. Chad notices a woman in the passenger seat and a man and a child in the back seat. And he asks the people in the Toyota Corolla if they know what's going on. They said they had not seen anyone or heard anything since arriving. That they were afraid to exit the vehicle because they were intoxicated and that they were afraid they would go to jail. Chad tells them to sit tight, that he will check it out. Chad walks up to the exit ramp to the idling cruiser. He knocks on the back window of the cruiser. Chad yells, "Is anybody out here? Is anyone here?" With no reply, Chad continues to walk around the cruiser. He looks down at the side of the cruiser and realizes that it is in fact a Bardstown City police cruiser. He walks around the front of the police cruiser, and that is when he sees the limbs that are blocking the roadway in the cruiser's lights. I'm saying cruiser a lot, I feel like. Chad continues to walk around the brush, and that is when he sees a body. A cop. He quickly runs back to the Toyota Corolla, and he tells the woman to use the police radio in the cruiser to call for help. That he is going to go back and check to see if he can find any signs of life on the police officer. Chad quickly makes his way back to the police officer. He straddles the body and he starts checking for a pulse. Chad says that the officer is cold to the touch and that he can find no signs of life. The woman quickly climbs inside the idling cruiser and makes the following call for help on Jason's police radio. I warn you that this can be disturbing to listen to.
Officer Danielle! You need to give us a location. Bluefield Road by the Y. There's been a tree limb or something. Officer down, please, emergency.
Dispatch 126, line 22, 137. Can you start that way?
Glad I'm on Bloomfield Road and towards Old Bloomfield Road. Towards the BG.
46, what's your status?
Their location on the BG?
Right by the BG, off of Bloomfield Road, towards the BG.
Dispatch, do you know what they're talking about?
Negative. Are you going to be in Bloomfield, ma'am? Bloomfield?
Off of Bloomfield, coming out of Bloomfield towards Springfield, off the BG.
It's going to be Highway 55 at the 34-mile marker. Exit, 34-mile marker exit. Highway 55 is going to be Bloomfield Road there.
Dispatch, I'm Bloomfield Road, passing 162, Old Bloomfield Road, is that way?
10-4. 44 or 46, what's your status?
We're dropping them off right now. We're heading that way. We're going to be the Y in Bloomfield.
Yes, sir, towards the BG. Come Bloomfield off the Y towards BG.
We're 10-4 on. 122, 126. Where did you say you were? I'm on Bloomfield Road. That's Chaparral State.
Ma'am, can you advise the status of the officer? Is he conscious?
I believe he's dead.
10-4. Ma'am, can you advise if this is going to be a car accident or if this is just a vehicle versus tree or what is going to happen?
Yes, sir. Hey, this is Chad Monroe. I know Mike Park personally. I mean, I can tell him exactly where I'm at. We're on the BG Parkway. We're coming off. We're coming from Bardstown, getting off on the Bluefield, Springfield exit.
I mean, is this going to be a car accident? Is there another vehicle involved, or is it just one vehicle versus a tree, or what?
I've come home from Heaven Hill Distillery. I've just got off work, and there was the police car is sitting in the middle of the road with the lights on, and we didn't know what it was. It's a tree across the road, and I didn't know what it was, and I got out and I went up there and looked, and it's him. I believe somebody hit him.
Okay, can you tell if he is breathing?
No, sir, he is not breathing. Body temperature is cold. Dispatch, have you already got EMS toned out that way?
That's correct. We've got EMS started.
At this time, dispatch calls the police department to let them know that one of their officers has possibly been killed in the line of duty. Here is that call.
Oh, Brian? Yes. This is Sherry out of dispatch. We have a squad call for a coroner. I will believe we have one of our officers down. They are on. We think they're on the off ramp of the blugrass at the Bloomfield exit. We had passersby calling in on the officer's radio, and that's where we think they are, on the off ramp at the Bloomfield exit.
All right, on our way.
Okay, thank you.
Officer Andrew Riley, Jason's best friend, is one of the first to arrive and quickly realizes that it is his friend, Jason, who has been killed. He first thought that Jason had been hit by a car because he thought his body had been pierced by gravel. But upon further inspection, after unbuttoning his shirt and removing his vest, he sees that it's not gravel, but that it is buckshot from a 12-gauge shotgun. He then calls Police Chief McCubbin, and he says, "Chief, they've killed him. They've killed him." Chief Rick McCubbin says he can remember thinking after arriving on scene, they've set him up. We've got a cop killer running around, and if they will kill a cop, it's untelling what they're capable of. Officer Riley made the following statements about that night, and again, this can be disturbing to listen to.
I came down Bloomfield Road, which is 62, and then we cut across 55 over top the bluegrass. And so I actually came down the exit backwards. And the only thing I could see at first, right as soon as I was crossing the bluegrass, I could see the reflection of his lights on the exit ramp. That's the only way I knew that they were actually on the ramp, because from either end of the exit you couldn't see anything. I just barely saw his lights hit the trees. I pulled down the ramp. Got as close to him as I could with the tree branches that were still in the roadway when I got there. A couple people were standing out of their cars. Mr. Monroe was down on the ground beside him. I ran up to him and started doing what I could that I thought could help. And then EMS was there. It seemed like almost instantly, and there was nothing else to do.
Meanwhile, back at the Ellis residence, there is a knock on the door. Amy Ellis enters the door and sees a chaplain and another officer standing in the doorway. Immediately, she knew that something had happened to Jason. Is he okay? Amy manages. That's when she notices that the other officer is crying. And he shook his head and said quietly, no. Amy's family, including her brother, who was also a Bardstown Police officer, and Jason's family, rushed to the house immediately to be with Amy. She said it didn't even feel real. Chief McCubbin held a press conference and vowed vengeance against the person who had killed Officer Ellis.
It's an eye for an eye. You kill one of my guys, I'm not going to rest till I have you in cuffs or on the front side of a weapon. And I mean that.
At Jason's funeral, there were thousands of officers, family, and friends. I was even shocked looking at the footage. It seemed a bit as if the whole county had turned out for Jason's funeral, if not most officers in the state of Kentucky. Vigo, Jason's trusted canine partner, placed his paw upon Jason's casket. Almost 7 feet tall, his headstone is located at Highview Cemetery in Chapel, Kentucky, and highlights the things that he held close. A handprint from each of his sons, a Reds emblem, an etching of him and his family holding hands, and bookended with an American flag and a thin blue line flag. I miss him so much, it's unbearable, Amy Ellis said. It's a nightmare I have to live with for the rest of my life. He was buried near the home that he shared with his wife and his 2 sons. Let's take a look at Officer Ellis's final ride.
I'm Rick McCubbin, Chief of the Bardstown Police Department, and a grateful community. Thank you for being here. You know, the thin blue line to most is simply a symbol. The thin blue line to a police officer is a family crest. And though one portion of it has been dented, it will never be severed. 7 years ago, a young man from Ohio took the oath of office. A Bardstown police officer. That was on May 30th, 2006. 7 years to the day. May 30th, 2013, we are saying farewell. Jason's mission was to be the ultimate sacrifice for what he loved, being a police officer. Captain Pollock mentioned his baseball career. Like most boys, loved baseball, still in high school, set those college records that many still remain today, yet to be broken. I spend a lot of time trying to get to know the men and women of my department. I remember when I spoke with Jason, I asked him about his baseball career. I said, you played semi-pro ball. First of all, you're in basketball country. What brought you here? He told me that was his dream, to play baseball. But because of his character and who he was, time on the road, pregnant wife, he said he decided it was just time to give it up, come back home. Jason, my friend, rest easy. We've got it from here.
I'm married to his younger sister, Lacey. I first met Jason about 8 or 9 years ago, shortly after Lacey and I started dating. I was serving in the military at the time, and had recently returned home from an overseas deployment. he would end up walking Lacey down the aisle at our wedding to give her hand to me in marriage. Many of you are here today who may have never met Jason. You've come to honor him as a fallen hero. Others of you are here who knew Jason as a police officer, someone who faithfully served and protected this community for the last 7 years. Still others of you knew Jason simply as a friend. No doubt, Jason certainly served in all of these roles, but perhaps Jason's most important role was that of a family man. Jason was a family man worth praising. Shortly after I met Jason, I witnessed the strong love and care he possessed for his family in a very evident way after his father suddenly passed away at age 57. Jason was only 25 at the time, when he was extremely close to his father. However, I watched Jason comfort and console his mother, his sisters, and his family with such poise. He wanted to help and be there for them, all the while struggling with an unbearable amount of grief himself. Certainly actions worthy of enormous praise. If I've ever seen a man who was head over heels in love with his wife, it was Jason. The time I spent with Jason made it very evident to me that he deeply loved Amy. She truly was the love of his life. His 2 children,
Jason's canine partner, Figo, was retired after Jason was killed. The husky German Shepherd mix stayed with Jason's widow and 2 kids for a while, and then moved to Jason's mother-in-law. She still took him to the Bardstown Police Department occasionally, where he still seemed to sit at the doors and wait for Jason to come out to greet him. A lot of the police officers at Bardstown still took Figo out on ride-alongs because he was still so eager to work. In 2017, Figo passed away after a long illness at 11 years old. He was laid to rest directly beside his best friend and his partner, Jason Ellis. Amy, Jason's wife, doesn't want Jason to be remembered as the cop who was murdered. She wants him remembered for his selflessness. So many people, including those he had arrested, would tell of how he had impacted their lives. His love for his family, because they were the light of his eye. His boys were everything to him. His love for his community. Jason truly loved Bardstown and everything about it. He took interest in his community and enjoyed doing so. Jason was the epitome of a small town cop.
And it doesn't make any sense.
But it leaves the Ellises with questions and fears. One of the boys worried he'll be killed in the middle of the night. How does it feel now, 5 years later, to know that this person who did this is still out there?
It's scary. And I mean, of course, I would like for, to have answers and closure. I can't imagine being face to face with the person that did it, and I would like for them to come forward and to pay for what they did.
Why do you think this case is still unsolved?
Lack of evidence.
Why is it important for you to talk about this now?
Well, it's 5 years, I feel like, is kind of a milestone, and it's not solved. I don't want people to forget that, number one, it's not solved. Number two, I don't want people to forget how amazing he was as a person, and a father and a husband, a brother, a son, a friend, an officer.
Jason Ellis still very much a part of their lives and a visible presence in their home and the boys' rooms with pictures and scrapbooks.
They're happy. And
meanwhile, police sent divers into a pond near exit 34, hoping to find the shotgun used in Jason's murder. They found nothing. They interviewed hundreds of people and chased countless leads. Still, nothing. After looking into past and previous cases and having no evidence found at the crime scene, aside from the fact that there were 2 different types of ammunition used, the case quickly went cold before it even really got started. Even after offering a $200,000 reward, the biggest reward offered in Kentucky's history. The police did, however, state that they believed it to be more than one person, due to the 2 different types of ammunition. And there were other factors as well. And that they would have required a degree of tactical precision, which could mean that it was a police officer, an Army vet, or someone with Army military training, which led to a lot of rumors that it was a professional hit. Here is what I believe, in my opinion, happened to Jason Ellis that night. I believe that this person had been watching Officer Ellis all night long. I believe that they had been keeping a close eye on his movements, and when they seen that he was getting ready to pull out of the jail and head home, they took off up ahead of him to set their trap. I believe then, at some point, this person came up on the exit, went to the end of the exit, parked, and let two assailants out of the vehicle who went on either side of the exit. I believe they hurried and laid the brush in the road, and then each assailant took their positions up on the ridge, hiding themselves behind the brush that lay on either side of the road, awaiting Officer Ellis to come by. I believe then that Officer Jason Ellis took the exit. He then seen the brush in the road, so he pulled his car to where it was across the road so that no one would pass, hit him, or hit the brush. He then exited his car to pick up the brush. And this is when they took the opportunity and shot Officer Ellis. The assailants then took back off to the awaiting vehicle at the end of the exit ramp and left. Days later, a letter was received at Bardstown Police Department threatening other officers. But after sending the letter to the FBI, their forensics team determined that it was most likely not written by the actual killer.
My gut says it's all BS. I think it's somebody probably sitting at home that's half nuts and the other half's high on some type of drug, dreaming it up, wishing it would happen perhaps. If you're going to shoot one of us again or you want to harm one of us again, you're going to do it. You're not going to give us the heads up.
When Jason's family was asked if they thought it could have been someone within the police department, one of his family members states, "I do. I'll be honest, but I won't elaborate. From day one, that's what I've said. It had to be someone that knew him, that knew his routine." A local gang, the Bardstown Money Gang, aka the BMG,
It's tied to a violent new group called the Bardstown Money Gang. BMG, what I rep, and I live at the Q.
began taking credit for the murder, bragging that they had killed a cop and gotten away with it. Officer Jason Ellis had had run-ins with some of the gang members. After attacking a man at the Bardstown Huddle House, after the victim used racial slurs toward the gang, Jason Ellis arrested one of the suspects from the attack. Deandre Douglas, the leader of the Bardstown Money Gang, was nearly arrested by Jason that same day.
Police say the victim used a racial slur to describe the suspects who took serious offense and seriously assaulted that victim. The 3 young men have since been charged, and tonight one is still on the loose. This is Deandre Douglas, and authorities in Bardstown say he's one of 3 guys responsible for attacking a man at this Bardstown Huddle House in November.
They stated that some words were exchanged between the two parties and the fight broke out in the parking lot.
That fight left the 62-year-old victim, Joseph Hagan, with serious injuries, but police told us today his words likely started this argument.
He was using some derogatory terms, and that's what sparked the initial fight.
Those derogatory terms were racial slurs, and police say they were directed at the suspects who followed the victim outside and beat him up before running away. It wasn't until last week that authorities were able to arrest a couple of them. Martin Barber was arrested by Lebanon police, then Officer Jason Ellis got a lucky break when he randomly pulled a car over with the other 2 suspects inside.
During the initial traffic stop, Deandre actually bailed out as the car was still moving. I took my chances that Darian was in the car, and got lucky, and he was.
August 2013, the Bardstown Money Gang interrupted a party attacking all underage partygoers, including the young girls, leaving no one untouched. They were infamous for attacking underage children and senior citizens. During the arrest, one of the gang members taunted the officers by saying that the Bardstown Money Gang was responsible for the murder of Jason Ellis. One of the victims claimed Brent Shekels, the nephew of Bardstown Mayor Bill Shekels, had kicked her in the stomach and in the head. She also said that the Bardstown Money Gang was chanting during the attack that they were cop killers and anyone who got in their way would suffer the same fate. The mayor made a statement a few days later that you can pick your friends, but unfortunately, you can't pick your family. And that regardless whether someone had the last name Shekels or not, if they committed a crime, would receive the proper punishment. As far as their claims of being involved in Officer Jason Ellis's murder, the police say that there is nothing to substantiate their claims and that most likely they just want the attention. Brent Shekels and others accepted plea deals that included the fact that they could not associate themselves with the BMG. Brent Shekels receiving jail time while the others only got probation. Maybe this was the way that Mayor Bill Shekels, Bardstown's first mayor of color, was to prove to the citizens of Bardstown that his family would not get any special treatment, and trying to calm the rumors that were quickly spreading.
Bardstown Mayor Bill Shekels' nephew, Brent Shekels, was arrested.
You can pick your friends, but unfortunately you can't always pick your relatives.
Sheriff Stephen Campbell says one BMG member bragged about killing Officer Jason Ellis the night of the party. Police Chief Rick McCubbin estimates the group to have around a dozen members, but can't be sure. He says they lock up the men in their early 20s and late teens all the time for misdemeanor crimes, but their punishments aren't keeping them behind bars.
The state as a whole is more worried about saving dollars than putting somebody in jail that needs to be in jail. And until we change that, we're going to continue to do this.
So the police chief, mayor, sheriff, county attorney, and Commonwealth's attorney met inside the Nelson County Justice Center for around an hour, hoping to find a solution. Campbell says they're going to learn more about gang activity and press the most severe charges possible. Both he and McCubbin say they have zero tolerance for what's been going on.
In July 2014, inmate Danny Early threatened a cop saying that he would push up daisies like Jason Ellis, and also made statements that the Cornbread Mafia gang...
John Robert Boone is the former leader of the Cornbread Mafia. Investigators call it the largest domestic marijuana syndicate in American history.
...was involved in his murder, but none of this statement could be corroborated. I will be going over the Bardstown Money Gang and the Cornbread Mafia Gang in a mini-series. Thousands of tips and leads, unfortunately, led to dead ends. The case is still open and handled by the Kentucky State Police. As for Amy and Jason's two sons, they moved away from Bardstown to feel safe and to try to live a normal life. Here's an interview that Amy done. Amy is now newly married, several years after the death of her husband. Jason's family has met with her new husband, and they say that if Jason would pick anyone for Amy, that it would be the man that she is with now.
Would want us to not just lay down and die and just give up. You know, he would want us to live a good life, and that's what I'm trying to do. It was not what I expected, and I know in his life either, and but God had bigger plans for both of us. He has been very supportive in allowing the boys and I to honor Jason, and that's been a very important part. And they, welcomed him with open arms, and he just fit right in. And, everyone has said if Jason could pick somebody, it would be him. Well, I don't take anything for granted. I live each day like it's going to be my last. Telling your loved ones that you love them, like anytime that you part. You love harder, you feel more, and you don't take anything for granted. I'm just hoping that by me speaking, for the first time, I feel like I'm finally in a better place where I can, and I'm ready, and I just hope that it will just stir somebody and somebody's conscience and they'll come forward.
In 2017, the state police brought in 2 retired police detectives to focus on Officer Ellis's murder. In 2020, the FBI became involved. The FBI had been working behind the scenes for years, but they became actively involved in the unsolved cases of Bardstown. Anyone with any information is to call the FBI or the Kentucky State Police. I'll leave the information in the video description down below. Our thoughts, hearts, and prayers go out to the Ellis family. Stay tuned for our next episode in this docuseries that will focus on the murder of Kathy and Samantha Netherland, a mother and a daughter, brutally murdered in their home in Bardstown, Kentucky. Please stay safe out there, and remember, as always, love yourselves, love each other, and I love